Rick Harrison, a familiar face to millions of Americans, because to his portrayal of the rags to riches story on the popular TV show Pawn Stars, was once a man of great intelligence and humor. The FBI raided a mansion under his mother's name and unearthed what the press described as a real-life nightmare on what seemed like an ordinary morning, completely shattering that picture. One FBI agent said, "We didn't just open a room. We opened hell after discovering a gruesome criminal network, a list of victims, encrypted files, and financial documents in a hidden room hidden behind a false wall." Authorities also found cash, guns, and financial documents. A celebrity scandal had evolved into this. Rick Harrison, who had become a symbol of the American ideal, found himself at the center of an unprecedented probe due to this federal criminal case. A massive and grave one that might cause the general public to lose faith in reality television as a whole. Why would anyone hold it up as an example of honesty and achievement when it was linked to a well-coordinated criminal enterprise that had been going on for quite some time? Specify what you saw in that room. Were Rick Harrison the scapegoat or the architect of a shadowy empire? In this video, we will discover the answer. 1. Rick Harrison and his mother's subdued but important role. In order to understand the gravity of this situation, it is necessary to go back to the general public's perception of Rick Harrison and the subtle but substantial influence of his mother in his personal and professional life. Rick Harrison came from a working-class household and was born the third of 3 children in Davidson, North Carolina, in 1965. His dad, Richard Benjamin Harrison Sr., started the small but steady gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas in 1989. In 2009, with the debut of the reality TV show Pawn Stars, Rick shot to prominence. The show's enormous popularity was due in large part to the fact that Rick and his family treated the pawn store like a miniature theater, with each item bearing a secret history. A cultural icon of the American rags to riches dream, the program was about more than simply business. Rick was portrayed by millions of viewers as a humble, straightforward guy who had an extraordinary talent for judging the worth of people as well as material possessions. This impression was further solidified by Rick's repeated portrayal as self-assured, principled, and sharp in interviews, media appearances, and popular YouTube videos. For that reason alone, the public was taken aback by the revelation that his mother's estate had a secret chamber discovered by the FBI. This went beyond a mere criminal act. The public's perception, which had been steadily declining for over a decade, finally crumbled. Notably, Rick Harrison made very few references to his mother during his career as a brand builder. Richard Sr.'s wife, Joanne Rue Harrison, was rarely seen in the media. She skipped all premieres and business functions and never made an appearance on the show. Nonetheless, the mansion that is currently under investigation by the FBI is one of several fixed assets that she possessed, according to public data from the Nevada Tax Authority. Experts in the financial field have long wondered why Rick, who is so careful with his money, would put his mother's name on the paperwork for a $5 million estate. Family asset sharing or tax optimization were the commonly accepted explanations at the time. However, those theories are now questionable due to the new discovery. Among the papers found in the secret chamber are those that Joanne Harrison signed on behalf of a corporate organization. The address of her house was associated with multiple shell companies that were registered in Delaware, the U.S. state with the most lax corporate laws. Adding to the suspicion, a series of intricate international wire transfers were carried out using the identities of family members, namely Joanne, and were redirected through multiple middlemen. The crucial question is therefore raised. Was she a passive bystander whose role was to launder money, or was she an integral part of the criminal organization? There are criminologists who believe it was no accident that Rick used his mother's estate as a base of operations and a place to hide and coordinate his activities. The use of a relative's name to structure ownership helped to shield the owner from direct scrutiny in the event of an investigation. It was less likely to attract attention because the property was located in a discreet, high-security gated neighborhood. According to Tom Rankin, a former DEA agent, this is a tried-and-true method of hiding white-collar crime assets and operations. Another telltale symptom of organized money laundering, he said, is when family operators front for corporations, possess property, or even help facilitate transactions. The discovery of the hidden room in the estate that Joanne Harrison owns has placed her under inevitable scrutiny, even though authorities have not yet determined whether she was manipulated or an active co-conspirator. She has been silent for years, and now the public wants to know who else in her family knew or helped hide Rick's actions. What follows is an expose of Joanne's and her house's true nature. 2. An undercover operation by the FBI and an unexpected revelation. The majority of the neighborhood was still asleep when the raid occurred at the beginning of the month on a Tuesday morning. Without any advance notice, media coverage, or leaks, the FBI and a federal special task force silently made their way to the mansion of Rick Harrison's mother. U.S. Department of Justice officials said that the search warrant was approved after investigators noticed financial system anomalies associated with the gold and silver pawn shop, of which Rick is the official owner. The initial focus of concern was on the possibility of money laundering through transactions involving valuable antiques. Something more substantial, nevertheless, was shown by the financial data from the Fink network, a complex network of offshore entities based in Panama, the British Virgin Islands, and, most significantly, anonymous Swiss bank accounts allows the transfer of funds. Among all the things, what was the most striking? The vast majority of these transfers were pointing to Rick's mother's Las Vegas house. The FBI's inquiry was broadened when they sensed further wrongdoing. They used the Patriot Act to track assets and trace the money. Until they had sufficient legal reasons to proceed, this phase lasted over 9 months. In addition to the obvious anomalies, they uncovered a secret underground facility within the house. An enormous secret room placed behind a wall that was neither visible nor included in the building permits had been painstakingly planned to hide a secret chamber, a tactic frequently employed by criminal organizations in their architectural schemes. The room was completely soundproof, situated behind a seldom-used modest living area, and could only be accessed using an electromechanical mechanism that did not require a physical key. Upon entering the premises, the agents quickly determined it wasn't a simple storage facility. It had its own lighting system, steel shelving that could withstand flames, secure filing cabinets that met military standards, and most importantly, active mini-servers installed on the wall, which caused them to pause. Rick Harrison, the guy millions put their faith in, went from being the object of suspicion to a storyline of terrifying certainty at that same moment. Hundreds of papers, records, ownership transfer contracts, and transaction statements associated with more than 17 firms spanning the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and Latin America were discovered on the shelves by the authorities. Contracts involving wire transfers of millions of dollars were common, signed by unnamed individuals or corporations whose representatives are not publicly available. The use of highly encrypted digital currencies for the majority of the transactions rendered them untraceable, a practice that is becoming more prevalent in international money laundering operations. Indisputable evidence of organized money laundering, the FBI proclaimed. Stacks upon stacks of cash, protected from moisture, stood next to the files. The total value of the currency was approximately $5 million, broken down into US dollars, euros, and British pounds. Most notably, there was a substantial quantity of Bitcoin printed as cold wallets, an offline way of storing crypto designed to evade detection. This was not someone's treasure trove of cash. It was a real black fund, a war chest, that criminal businesses often have that was collected, organized, and safeguarded. What was even more concerning was the armory that was found: 11 pistols, 3 assault rifles, 2 sniper rifles of military quality, and more than 3,000 rounds of ammunition. There were no entries. The serial numbers could not be located since they were either illegible or covered up. There were telltale indicators that some of these firearms had come from the shadow market in Eastern Europe, a region notorious for its lengthy history of illicit arms trade and networks linked to the mafia. Quickly, the authorities began to wonder if this was just a storage facility or if it was actually a transportation center for a bigger underworld enterprise linked to Rick Harrison. Next, documents of human trafficking were discovered, which no one had anticipated. Hundreds of individual files, including names, photographs, identification numbers, and, in certain instances, last known whereabouts, were stashed in a safe that was installed in the wall. Several of these files matched missing person cases in a nationwide database. Tragically, several of the victims were found to be children from the US, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. The files contained information about the victims' physical characteristics, notes about their condition, and where they were temporarily held. These data indicate a disturbing degree of organization, which raises the possibility that this was not only a profit-driven trafficking operation, but also involved organized labor and sexual exploitation. The data was securely encrypted using proprietary codes and terminology, but the servers located in that room had all the necessary algorithms to decrypt it. According to the FBI's findings, this was a command center for coordinating the storage, management, and analysis of a criminal organization's money. To sum up, this wasn't a spot to hide. From managing human resources in this instance, victims of human trafficking, to laundering money and shifting criminal assets, Rick Harrison, or someone authorized by him, oversaw it all from this control center. U.S. citizens were shocked and outraged as soon as the first story was made public. A national inquiry resounded. How could Rick Harrison, a prominent and esteemed public figure who has never been in problems with the law, be a part of a network as malicious and complex as this one? His usual TV persona, a dapper polo shirt, piercing eyes, and charming wit, now appeared to be an act. An astonishing criminal operation was exposed when a mask was removed, exposing it in all its exposed glory. What, however, was the matter that most concerned the FBI? The data collected from the servers was the catalyst that propelled the case to a federal inquiry on a global scale. The contents included encrypted emails, sent and received using addresses associated with people on Interpol's Red Notice list, as well as records of internal transactions. This proved that Rick Harrison and his associates weren't working in a vacuum, but rather were interconnected links in a global criminal enterprise. It is currently being considered by experts as one of the most significant white-collar criminal cases of this decade.